Hi and welcome. We are so excited. I'm April Morris and I'm with my wonderful co-host, Darlene Willman. We are here with David Tyreman. We're going to be doing a great, fantastic interview on branding. He's a branding expert. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce David. David Tyreman is the author of a book called World Famous: How to Give Your Business a Kick-Ass Brand Identity. David Tyreman specializes in helping entrepreneurs, small businesses, solopreneurs, and a host of other organizations get clear about their true brand. He has helped differentiate and develop brand identity for some best-known companies on the planet, such as Polo Ralph Lauren, Nike, Banana Republic, Tommy Hilfiger, and Disney. He's been featured on CNN, The Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, and many other TV shows, magazines, and newspapers. His company, World Famous, brings his experience and expertise to your business and shows you that you don't need to be one of the big guys to reap big rewards. You can learn more about David at worldfamouscompany.com. So welcome. Thank you for joining our call tonight.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Aloha.
Aloha. He's calling in from beautiful Hawaii, so it's so nice there, I'm sure.
It's pretty nice today, and we're packing up because we're leaving. We're moving back to the mainland.
Oh!
In less than 2 weeks.
That's great. That's exciting.
So that's why the screenshot is really narrow, because we've got boxes everywhere around.
I'm sure.
And
Great.
all the stuff you find when you're moving, it's like you open. How come one drawer fills 5 boxes? That makes no sense to me.
I hear you. That's so the truth. Darlene, you want to share anything before we dive into this interview?
Oh, I'm just, really looking forward to talking with David. We had met years ago, and I was just so impressed with the work that he was doing. And April and I were talking about who we were going to have as our guest tonight on our monthly hangout with April and Darlene. So those of you that are watching now, you're watching live. We're also recording this. It's a service that we provide really for our students of our Partner and Promote program. And so we do this once a month. It's called Hangout with April and Darlene.com. Will take you directly to see the broadcast if you're watching us now. But yeah, we're looking forward to this. And David, let's just dive right in, because April and I have like a bunch of questions we want to ask you, and I know that time is limited. So I wanted to ask you personally, why do you think branding is just so important?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. And I'm going to ask both of you a question. And I'm asking everybody who's listening, everybody who watches the recording, to just immediately write this down when I ask you the question. So either of you who want to go first, I want you to think back to when you were a child. What was the first brand that you can remember that you just had to have? Could be a toy, could be candy, anything. Could be a TV show, but what was the first brand that you knew you had to have, or you would beg your parents, beg your grandparents? What comes to mind?
Barbie.
Barbie, that's what I wrote. I wrote the same thing. Wouldn't you know it?
Okay, so you both chose Barbie.
Yeah.
I was doing a presentation just down the road about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, and I asked the audience, I said, what kind of brands did you have to have when you were kids? And this lady on the front row, she goes, Marlboro Lights! And I was like, no. So anyway, she still said, no, Marlboro Lights! I'm like, okay. So I'm just going to tell you really briefly a brand you might never have heard of. But when I was a kid, the brand that comes to mind, it's called Branston, and it's a pickle, or you might call it a relish in the United States. And they have a little jingle, and it goes, bring out the Branston. And so we'd sit at the dinner table as kids, and we'd sing to Mum, bring out the Branston, and she'd go and get the Branston. And you have Branston with cheese, you have it with salads, you have it with pies, you have it with all sorts of sandwiches. I have it with all sorts of things. I have it shipped into Hawaii because you can't buy it here. Anyway, one day we ran out of Branston. So my mum called my dad at the office and said, please bring some Branston home. And he was like, sure. Well, of course, he forgot. And so we're sitting at the dinner table, and as my dad's coming home, he's like, oh, I forgot the Branston. So he stops at the corner store, and of course they didn't have Branston, so he bought a generic brand. And I always remember, and it's just weird because it's just relish, but he came in to the dining table with this brown paper bag, and he plonks the bag down on the table. I put my hand in, and out comes this, what's this? It's not Branston! Where's my Branston? And it was like, oh, this is all wrong. And so I want to just make the point that even relish, knowing that there's a host of choices of relish, I knew I had to have Branston. And whatever brand you chose, I know you both chose Barbie, but out of all the things you could have chosen, you knew you needed a Barbie. So everybody who's watching, you thought of a brand. I know what a brand came to mind. Some people shout out Lego, some people shout out Captain Crunch, Levi's, you name it. But out of a host of choices, you knew there was that one you wanted. So I'm here to let you know, because we don't get born knowing how to build a brand. Building a brand is a learned behavior. But out of all the choices, you knew as a child that it's possible to choose just that one and strip away all the competition. So by default, in reverse, it's possible to be that brand. It's possible to become the brand, the only brand that people want. And the reason we need brands, I could talk about that for several hours, because I hate competition. I hate feeling invisible. I hate feeling I've been overlooked. I hate feeling that nobody really knows what makes me different or better than the next person doing what I do. So the reason we need a brand is so that people not only choose us, but they are delighted to choose us. They are in love with the idea of choosing us because it really stands out and means something to them on an emotional level. That's what a brand is. And we all know that's the truth, because you hear people all the time saying, oh, I love the Mini, or I love Louis Vuitton, or I love whatever. They use the word love with a brand. So that's why we do it. It's for love.
That's so true. That is so true. I know that we've got like so many questions for you, but can you tell us a little bit about your background, your story, so that we kind of know how you became a branding expert, and then we could dive back into all the questions that we have for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started, I'll tell you a condensed version of my story, but I came to the United States, really, I'm your typical American dreamer type story. I was in love with brand America. I learned about America in geography when I was about 11 years old. And as soon as I learned about the melting pot and learned about what America stood for, I remember turning to my classmates saying, I'm in. I've got to go there. And so it was always my ambition to come and live in the US and do business in the United States. And my big idea at first was to bring antiques from England and sell them the way people buy Tupperware. So my big idea was antique parties in people's homes. Huge failure. We went broke within the first few months. And I remember we went out for a drink with our last $20. And we had a really important night, because that was the night I realized I'm broke, but I'm loving this adventure. And so I think what that caused for me was to get really committed, no matter what. Like the next morning I woke up penniless, but I realized this is the day I've been dreading, but I'm not afraid. I'm actually inspired to go for it. So I'm condensing the story a lot because I want to come to something really about branding, but I'm just for everyone's information, from that day when I woke up penniless and a bit hungover from drinking the night before with our last $20, 7 years later, my company was one of the big three branding companies. If you've ever been to a Ralph Lauren store and you see all the things that they use to make their brand look the way it's supposed to, it came from my company. It was called Propaganda, my company. All the old suitcases and trunks, the mountain bikes, the surfboards, the trophy cups, the pictures, the rugs on the floor that say Polo, everything that tells that story that the Polo brand is sharing, all came from my company. The same for Nike and Tommy Hilfiger and Nautica and Levi and a huge list of companies. Because as I realized that I wanted to do something big in the United States, I knew I wanted to work with some of the very best brands. Therefore, I had to build a brand, because I realized I was just trying to be, at first, I was just trying to be an antique dealer, and I was kind of invisible in the sea of antique dealers. So let me just say this, because I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to. I remember thinking, I've got a brand. I have a logo. I've got a business card. When the internet was invented, I had a website, and I shipped my goods in brown paper boxes with stickers on them. I felt I had a brand. It was called Propaganda. But I wasn't getting the attention I needed. One day, we got an order from a local Macy's store. And we were in San Francisco now, so we shipped this order to the local Macy's store in Burlingame, actually. And 3 days later, they called and they said, we haven't got the order. So we would never want a customer, to think that we were lazy or not on top of it. So we immediately, at a great expense to ourselves, we overnighted a replacement order. And we were saying, listen, it should be easy to find. It's in brown cardboard boxes that's got fragile stickers on the side. But the next order went out. 3 days later, they call again, and they're like, we still haven't got the order. So I'm like, well, there's something wrong here, because it's been signed for by someone at Macy's. So I said, listen, I'm going to come over. It would be great to meet you. I'll take you for coffee, but I'll find that order in your warehouse. So I drove to Burlingame. I went to the Macy's dock, and that's when I don't know if you've ever been to a Macy's shipping and receiving dock. They're massive. And what I learned that day, to my horror, was that everybody ships in brown cardboard boxes. It took me 4 hours to find my orders. I did find them. So here I am, supposed to be the expert in differentiation, and so I knew I had a problem because I was doing something that made me invisible. So I went back to my company, got all our employees together, and we all sat together and discussed, what do we do? And we didn't know what to do. So after a lot of brainstorming, we came up with this really amazing idea, and it was to have white cardboard boxes. But the difference was we printed big pictures of myself and my business partner on the box, and we created a quiz for the box, and it said, on the box, it said, who are the best looking guys on this box? So finally I won something. But we put all sorts of fun and silly and tongue-in-cheek information on the boxes. It said things like, please pretend this box is made of chocolate, but don't lick your hands. It said, if you take this box to the department that ordered it, your gift is you get to pop the bubble wrap yourself. And it also said, if you like this box, please dial this number. And we started getting calls from all over the country, from big burly warehouse guys saying, oh, we like your box. And we became known as those guys with the boxes, because our boxes were different than anyone else's. And then during trade shows, buyers would start saying, oh, those are those guys with those cool boxes. And they would start recommending us. So then we thought, okay, where else can we, because this idea was just to stop our orders being lost. We never thought of it as a means to build a brand. But then we thought, well, where else can we apply this kind of fun idea that's getting a response from our customers? So we started printing our own FedEx envelopes. We started recording our own messages on hold. Everywhere that our business touched the world, we tried to touch it differently than anybody else. And by doing that, fun was our middle name. We really wanted to be a fun, serious, but fun. Like, we do our job well, but we enjoy what we do on an adventure. And that was the story of our brand. And our customers knew it. And I think that's what had them feel delighted to do business with us, because they're busy doing their jobs, and we were like a breath of fresh air. And it got to be reminded every time they touched my company. Fun, silly messages on hold. We even had an invoice. Once we were behind, people were behind paying us on time, so we created an invoice that talked. You know, you get those birthday cards that sing.
Yeah.
So our CFO was Russian, so we had him record a card that says, "You must pay this bill now." And that's how we put the bill in with a card. And so imagine you work in the accounts receivable department in Sears, and all you do all day long is process invoices, and all of a sudden this Russian card is saying, pay this bill today, and they started paying early. So we made sure that our brand connected with people, and that was our number one job, was to make sure we really were remembered and gave people a smile. So
that's great.
That's my long answer.
Thank you.
Branding.
I want to read. I've got your book here. I want to read one thing out of it, and then I want to ask you a question.
You know what? You're in great company.
I know. See?
Oh,
Love
I
it.
feel
It's a
left
great
out.
book.
Mine's not with me.
Okay, listen to this. For everyone that's listening live or to the replay, here's what he says. This is in chapter 3, page 89. Page 69, and he says, if the marketplace cannot distinguish your business from a host of others, how will you stand out as the only choice? So here's what I'm like so crazy about this subject, because I believe so much it's so important to be a one of a kind and be different and position your brand and your business as the only obvious choice. So the question is, how can an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, a coach, someone who's getting started, they're ready to do something and differentiate their brand, how do they do that? What advice do you have around that?
It's such a great question, and I'm really glad you asked that question. And I'm just going to give you an example that happened just last week for me.
Okay.
Like I just mentioned earlier, we're moving from Hawaii to Las Vegas. So we have a condo here, and we're going to rent it out. We're going to put tenants in and enjoy having rental income from this property. So I organized 3 interviews with 3 different property management companies, and the first 2 came, and the first lady, she came and she was very nice, very, very pleasant, and she sat down and told us what they do, and she told me we charge 10%, and I asked my questions about rent, about what the market's like and stuff like that. And at the end of the interview I said, well, why should I choose your company? What makes you better than the others? And she looked at me and she's like, we're the oldest? I'm like, okay, thanks. So off she went. Then in the afternoon, another guy came from a different company, and he came and he almost told me word for word the same stuff that she told me. He told me about the market, he told me what he thought the rent was, and at the end of the chit-chat, I said, so why should we choose you? And he goes, we've been around a long time, and we're the biggest. I'm like, okay. So then the next day, the third guy came. And the third guy sat down and he goes, so listen, I want to tell you something. You probably already had some property managers around, and let me tell you, they've probably told you, this is what we charge, this is how we do it, here's the form. He goes, let me tell you some other things that they do too. When they put the property on the open house, people come in the door and they say, here's an application form, here's an application form. He goes, we don't do any of that. Let me tell you how different we are from them. We care about you getting your property rented. We make sure that we do this and we do that and we do the other. And he totally explained what differentiated him from the rest. And I told him during the interview, I said, have you read my book? And I said, if you haven't, you need to buy it right now. But I also said, at the end of, because people so often don't know about differentiation, I normally have to ask, what makes you different? What makes you better? I said, I don't need to ask you. You've told me clearly about you. And he explained during the presentation, he shared his passion for what he does. He explained why he started his company. He explained what type of experience I could expect to have. So he'd really thought it through. So often in this world, people do what's expected of them. They actually look over their shoulder at their industry and say, well, how's it done in my industry? I better do it like that. And before you know it, people are literally bolting on camouflage and then wondering why they've become invisible. Why is no one choosing me? I'm behaving just the way it's done in my industry. No, it's not good enough. It's not acceptable. We can't afford to do that. So the thing that I want to really make sure we've talked about today very briefly is what we call the distinction between branding and brand identity. And you'll remember in the title of my book, it talks about how to give your business a kick-ass, let me just show it in the camera, a kick-ass brand identity. So I want you really thinking about the term brand identity. But first we're going to talk about branding, because we all see branding all the time. Branding is your website, branding is your logo, branding is your videos you have on your website, branding is even the signature at the bottom of your email. It's every single thing. If you have a product, it's your packaging. So every single thing we do as a company where we touch the world, where we're trying to get the attention of customers, is called branding. 95% of businesses jump into their branding effort without being clear about their brand identity. And that's why we throw away so much branding. That's why we ignore it. That's why we're immune to it. So here's what I want you to write down. Even if you're driving, remember this. Don't try and write while you're driving, but if you are listening to this, most companies behave like vendors. And if you think of yourself as a vendor, or realize, I think I'm behaving like a vendor, I want you to write this down. Vending is for machines. Vending is for machines. We don't need to be vendors, we need to be brands. So by becoming a brand, we must get clear about our brand identity. What is it that makes you tick? What makes you you? What makes you unique? And people sit there, all of a sudden when it's my turn, let me tell you, it's like, oh, what is it? I don't know. But it's so easy to see other people's differences when we get to know them. So make sure you don't try and build a brand alone. That's the hardest way to build a brand. It's much more successful to do it with the experts, with a group, with friends, with colleagues, with customers. Your customers can give you really great advice on who you really are and what they got from their experience. But we need to know what is it that makes you tick? Why did you do it? Because I know what I love about helping entrepreneurs create their brands. I know why I'm doing this, and I know what's different about my company because of the passion I have for what I do and because of how I like to deliver my services. All of these things are important to your customers. So there's a number of questions that I make sure I ask you when you're going through the process, but you must know your brand identity so that your branding can be effective. And that's really the nature of the beast. Before we start singing our own praises, we need to know what it is we have to communicate, our brand message, which is your brand identity.
Great.
I hope I didn't go off on too many tangents.
No, that's good.
We go all over the place and then we wrestle it in.
Yeah, one of your chapters, you talk about the power of the super niche. Can you really talk about what does it mean? There's a niche and then the super niche, and then how can an entrepreneur figure out what their super niche is?
Okay, so back when I ran propaganda, we had a huge property in San Francisco. It was a 27,000 square foot warehouse, and we found that our market were they were people, they had big budgets, they were very creative people, and they loved to party. So we threw some amazing parties, and we had a room that we actually called the party room. I would have the guys in the warehouse build these big wooden crates, and we'd hire go-go boys and we'd hire go-go girls. We'd hire DJs, we'd have smoke machines, and we'd have a raunchy, wild party that would go on till 4 or 5 in the morning. And so that was happening in the party room, but I always liked to make sure everybody was catered for. So in the room next to it, it was more of a lounge. We had waiters and waitresses with silver trays, with hors d'oeuvres and with cocktails, and there was lots of blankets and pillows, and it was a really chill-out space, and people loved coming to our parties. Anyway, one day, I was on a bus. I was back visiting my family, and we were going out one night to a Indian restaurant in Bradford, of all places, and we were on a bus. And I remember christening these two ladies who were sitting in front of me. I called them to myself Mrs. Prim and Mrs. Proper, because I noticed that everybody who got on or off the bus, they had something to say about them, and it wasn't nice. It was derogatory. Whoever they were, they had something to say. And I remember Mrs. Prim and Mrs. Proper, they really stuck in my mind, because I think in business, we're so busy trying to please everybody, we can be, that we can accidentally please nobody. So I thought, wow, imagine if I could press a button and Mrs. Prim and Mrs. Proper were now walking into my party in San Francisco. Well, oh gosh, well, we don't want to upset them, so we better get rid of the go-go boy. That's going to upset them. Better get rid of the go-go girl. We better get rid of the smoke machine. Turn the stereo down. Hide the alcohol. They're not going to like that. So before you do it, the party is boring and no one's happy. It's just a room. So the reason I talk about the super niche, or the super niche, however you want to say it, is because we really need to know who our real customers are, who really is your business for. And I'm not saying I would turn away Mrs. Prim and Mrs. Proper, but they're allowed in too, but they don't dictate how my party's going to run. My customers, who my customers really are, and what our true connection is, that's who we are, and everyone else is welcome too. So that's how I go about understanding the super niche and what it's really made of from a point of, now that's the story to help explain it, because that's what business is about. It's people, it's relationships, it's connection. That's what a brand is. That's what business is. In business terms, it's where your demographics meet what we call psychographics. So in my business, my business is designed to really help entrepreneurial types of company. A psychographic is people's aspirations and frustrations. We need to know what makes our customer tick, and we must connect with that. Like Nike are a great brand who connect with the aspiration of breaking our own personal boundaries, going for it, pushing past the crap. But there's a lot of people who sit and watch TV all day long wearing Nikes. They like the story. They don't necessarily have to be the ones that do it, but they like the idea of just doing it. It fits. So, but Nike's true super niche are the people who really are doing it. And lots of other people can like that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You know, it's like when you're really being your authentic self and it reflects that in your brand, you know, the people that really aren't a fit for your brand, you don't have to turn them away. They end up disqualifying themselves and they go away on their own. And you got to, or they choose to say, yeah, you know what, I connect with this person or this brand.
You know, I want to just share this. I'm personally friends with a guy called Hap Klopp, and he's the founder of the North Face. Amazing American iconic brand. And the North Face is all about pioneering. And Hap Klopp, you know, I love his stories about starting this. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar company today, but he started it out of a little garage, just like I started my business from a garage. And what they cared about was really serving people who wanted to go mountaineering. So the North Face name, I didn't know this, but the hardest face of a mountain to climb is the North Face. I never knew that. So it's the pioneers who are like, I'm climbing that mountain and I'm doing it the hardest way because I've got to prove that to myself. So they pioneered new equipment made from different materials that was much lighter than the standard materials, so that their mountaineers could climb faster and climb farther and still have energy. They pioneered new materials for backpacks to make them lighter. So they were really designed for the serious enthusiast, the serious mountaineer. But it's a brand that we can all love because we love that passion and we love that idea of being a pioneer. I'm not going to go and climb a mountain ever. If you ever trying to find me, do not look at a mountain because it's the scariest thing in the world. But I've got my you know, North Face clothing and brands because I love the idea that the brand stands for. So that's what we're talking about here.
Great. I love that. Darlene, do you have a question for David?
Well, you know, time is just like flying by here, and I love the stories. I love how you're tying in how important it is to have your brand identity, and April and I work really hard on that. We really try to find, something that is a little different, a little bit more cutting edge. That's why we like doing these Google Hangouts, because they're a little scary for some and for others. But it's just a great way to reach out to the community and for people to get a chance to connect with us. But David, I wanted to ask you what some of your plans are for 2014. What do you have going on for next year?
Well, I mean, a lot, because we came to Hawaii. It's been a great thing on many levels. But I'm so excited to be back on the mainland. I don't have anything bad to say about Hawaii. It's been a beautiful experience. And being on the mainland is where my business is supposed to be. I came to Hawaii for non-business reasons. I came here after I sold my company, I went through bankruptcy because of the dot-com crash in San Francisco around the beginning of the millennium. And, it really took me down. It was a very painful experience. And I was like, God, it wasn't anything to do with business. It was because of real estate, actually, and the stock market, the NASDAQ. And so I came here to kind of lick my wounds, but I managed to come here with a little chunk of change so I could not work for a while. But after a few months, I got busy writing my book and recreating my business, creating all my programs, and learning how to sell online by being a long, long, long way away from people. I suppose. But what I've really learned, what I've really learned about the internet, and everyone's like, how do we sell online? What's the secret to internet sales? And you know what the secret is? Being in person, being offline. We've got to connect with people on a heart level. You've got to connect with people in real time, even if it's even though this is the internet, it's not just an order form on the internet. How do we get together and meet in groups? How do we where can we meet live? So we chose Las Vegas for a whole bunch of different reasons, but it's so that we can be in front of live audiences more, reach out and do more events like this, but have the opportunity to meet personally as well and do events in front of a live audience, because it's so much fun. And people really learn when they get to see someone else have a breakthrough or get to hear someone ask a question that they were, oh, I can't ask that question because it's going to make me sound stupid. And then someone else dares ask the stupid question, and that's the breakthrough they needed. We all need to dare ask stupid questions, by the way. So, I remember just going on a silly tangent. Let me tell you, the only job I've ever had was for the Prudential Assurance Company in London, and I was in their property management department. I have a degree in real estate and stuff. Anyway, I failed to ask them what my job was. And 6 months later, I was too embarrassed to ask. And I've run across people all the way through my life who have said, I had a job and I never actually knew what it was. And people have said, me too! And so many times people start professional jobs, but they've never been told, here's what you're supposed to do to perform in this job. So it was imagine after 6 months how stupid the question would have been to say, what's my job? So anyway, all I'm saying is, don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, because you'll be amazed what you find out. And the same is true, especially about your brand, because sometimes we miss the most obvious things about what makes us very choosable. And people sometimes try to come up with some kind of rocket science reason, whereas I got chosen initially because my biggest competitor were a company in New York, and they were actually very rude. They were a rude company. They kind of owned a big chunk of the market, and they'd stopped being nice to their customers. I found that being fun was a great way to win a lot of business. That was a big part of my brand, just being fun. So it's easy to overlook things that come naturally to us sometimes. And that's I can be anyway, sorry, go on, carry on.
Well, sorry, I was just wanting to find out what kind of programs you have in place and how some of our students might be able to plug into what you have going on.
Well, we've got two programs in particular that I want to mention, and if you go to my website, which is worldfamouscompany.com, and just look under the shop tab, there's two different programs. The first one is called Your Brand Message, and we're doing it at a special rate of $97 at the moment, and it helps you get really clear about what your real brand message is to put through all of those brand touch points that we talked about earlier. And what I found is when people do that program, they really enjoy it, so then they want to upgrade to our bigger program, which is called the Brand Launcher. And the thing that's great is if you do buy the brand, Your Brand Message, we give you a code so that if you want to upgrade, the price that you paid is deducted from the other one, or if you just go ahead and get the Brand Launcher, it includes Your Brand Message. So we've got two programs. They're both very affordable. The Brand Launcher, you get bi-monthly meetings with me live, and so we go through, and this is where you get to ask all your questions, and I help guide you. There's lots and lots of information online, tutorials. You get your brand profile online, which you get to complete as you're doing the modules, and you get to talk to other people who are doing this too. So like I said, building a brand isn't something that you do on your own. You do it in a group. Brands aren't built in caves. We need to do it with bouncing ideas off of other people. So you get all of that, and you can also start, even though it's me promoting myself, this on the book here, this little silver thing, is Business Book of the Year. So it got some really good feedback, and I've got loads and loads of testimonials on what this book's done for people. So you can get started really inexpensively, and my programs have made them very affordable too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited that we were able to spend some time together today, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I know right in the middle of moving and everything. And, I hope that you'll keep in touch with April and I. Let us know what's happening.
Oh,
And
I would love
especially
to.
when you get out to Las Vegas, let us know what kind of events you have going on. And you never know, April and I might just fly out and crash your party.
That would be fantastic.
That'd be great. David,
Okay,
it's
well,
been
thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I've had a great time chatting with you. You're both great interviewers.
thank you. It's been
What a
great
unique
talking
group.
with you, and you're just always a wealth of knowledge. I just appreciate it so much, and I know everyone that's listening or listening to the replay definitely thought so too. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And again, you guys remember to visit his website, worldfamouscompany.com. And we just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us, for listening to our hangout with April and Darlene. And we look forward to next month, where we bring on our next expert, which we'll be announcing here real soon. So, David, thank you so much. Hope you have a fabulous Thanksgiving and safe travels back to the mainland.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
Thank
We'll
you.
be in touch. Okay,
Bye.
bye.